Hello, everybody. One of the things I wanted to do here is look at our high school, Byron High School, and looking at how our standards align to those of other places that have Common Core standards, in particular Kansas. The reason why Kansas Common Core standards are being used is because they did a really good job presenting these and are something that we can look side by side at in looking at what we've done at our school. So some of the inconsistencies that we saw, that's the big thing I want to look at. And on this website, you'll see when I've talked to my English group about this, we were looking at the inconsistencies in our standards versus Kansas and see if we need to do or change anything or what direction we're going because of this. One thing I noticed is when I was looking at their standards is that you see they have broad ideas. They had something called literacy anchor standards. Now they only had it for literacy, uh, and when we're looking at this, they didn't have anything for the language or speaking and listening or writing, but they do have something called literacy, and this is kind of like their overarching concepts, what they're going to look at, regardless what grade level it is, almost like goals. So if you look at them, those are pretty nice. As for our school, we don't have anything like this. Is this something that I think we should have? It might be a neat idea to have and something to discuss grade level wide. So one of the things I wanted to look at here real quick is how we compare to Kansas in terms of our anchor standards. Now, if you look at these, ours are fewer. They have 12, and the ones with the little flowers by it is they took the liberty of changing stuff, and it looks like the ones that they changed usually added in some kind of technologically based information. Now we have standards that focus solely on technology. We did not include those into reading or writing or speaking and listening. We have those separate. The reason why is we have a class yearbook, actually, which I teach, that really hits upon those things, and we wanted those isolated. And at the same time, we still use those in our classes. Anyway, going back to this, you can see they have 12. We have 4. And the reason why we have 4 is we combined some ideas within them, but at the same time, I noticed that we missed out on a couple things. So if I look at their key ideas and details, and they have all sorts of stuff there, you can see how ours are kind of combining those things. So read closely to determine what the text says. You can see how we have information in there that really looks at theme and complex characters over the course of a text by citing strong and thorough evidence. So you could see how we're missing out on some things, and it's almost like a lot of times when we're using these standards, I feel like we're missing out on some specific concepts, and this is just the anchor standards. So as I move on, again, I look at the anchor standards here. Writing, we did a little bit better job here covering most of these things. We have write arguments to support claims and an analysis. And if you look at ours, it's almost word for word. W2, write informative, explanatory text. They cover most of those things, text types and purposes. We did pretty well. And then going further down, production and distribution, they have 4 standards there where we have just produce clear and coherent writing appropriate to the task by planning and editing, which is basically their 4. And we combined it with 5. So do we cover essentially the same things? Yes, we have our bases covered. Now, if you look at some of this stuff, it breaks down 9 and grade 10 into other standards. Now, this is something that we don't have. Their anchor standards are their anchor standards, but our standards are their anchor standards. We don't go into the specifics like this. And I think this might be something that may be hurting us, because one thing I notice is that it's like, where are we going? How do we build from 9th grade to 10th grade? Whereas if you look at theirs, they have that nice separation of ideas. I think this is something that we need to address and talk about, and we'll see in the discussion with this, whether or not they agree with what I'm talking about. Um, Here again, you can see more or less we have the same things covered. We combined some ideas. Um, However, I think there's some things that we're missing out. If you look at speaking and listening to, we have present information findings, and they can do all these things. But one of the things that they have is make strategic use of digital models and visual displays. That's something that we don't have in there. So I think that we're missing again like some of those key ideas. And then they break it down. Um, I personally like this a little bit more because I feel like sometimes my umbrella is trying to cover things that maybe need to go into a little bit more information. Again, we have it with language. We're hitting basically the same concepts and ideas. We're missing out those on some of those things, um, and then they break it down further. So, big thing that I want to discuss with my group is what are some strengths and weaknesses with our reading standards, with their standards, or do they have too many? Um, or maybe we don't have enough. Is there a middle ground that we need to address? What do we need to do? And the concept of my website after this point is, what do we need to do? Do we go and we utilize backwards design? Do we need to rethink some things? What is our curriculum going to look like? These are things that I think are pretty important to ask as I establish this professional development.